This is a very special episode today. It is number 50. It's come pretty fast. I started in late May, I think, around Memorial Day, and I've gone all summer. Definitely RPG a day 2021 helped. Like 31 podcasts back to back, day after day. But here in 50, Jason Connerly has a lot of calls in response to my last couple episodes. And yeah, just give him the floor and make some responses. And hopefully we'll continue this conversation and maybe add some more people to it. It's a pretty cool set of calls, and I hope you enjoy.
Hey, Carl, Jason the Rat Pack. I had to pause 3 minutes into your episode because, maybe I'm going to stop calling into shows. I don't think I'm communicating clearly at all. I think it's what I'm hearing is both you and Arlen Walker of Live from Pelham's Wasteland are missing my point as far as what I'm saying. When I made the kitty comment with fourth edition Warhammer Fantasy and second edition Warhammer Fantasy, it's the simplification of the system. It's specifically the rules and the mechanical bits, not the campaign. But neither of you seem to grasp that. You think I'm talking about your campaign. Like I say, you can use the kittiest system out there. The Monty Cook, forget you evil game, whatever it is, and run a gritty game. So the system does not determine the tone. Well, just because DCC's Gonzo doesn't mean you have to play it kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, although obviously you should. So I'm shooting myself in the foot here a little bit. But my comments on Warhammer 4th edition had nothing to do with the tone of your game. And since you guys, I can't communicate that clearly, maybe I should stop calling.
Hey, Jason, I thought we were done with the Warhammer fantasy, but I guess you are actually responding to Joe Richter, who said, "Don't believe Jason, etc., about the Warhammer game." Yeah, I do agree with you, really. I mean, we can use any system that we want and be as gritty and dirty as we want. Some games I feel like can communicate that better. And really a lot of it depends on the players and their interaction and how really they buy in to the world, and whether or not the system is a hindrance or a help into that world. For example, when we play tested Dune, some people liked that narrative style and other people felt that it was a hindrance because you had to sort of meta your choices. And that is similar to Star Trek, right? Where things aren't as well codified and you have to think about and meta your choices a little. But I think Star Trek does it better because at least the categories for skill and attribute or division are a bit less broad and are centralized or focused at least along, the lines of how you fit into the Federation, right? So that helps a little bit to inform decisions downstream, whereas not being so broad and vague as Dune was about your sort of motivation and what skill or what drive or whatever you're going to use for each one of these challenges. So, and I think what I like about Warhammer Fantasy 4th is that it lets us play a game where we don't have to keep looking. We still look up spot rules, but we don't have to keep looking up the rules and remembering the procedural for gameplay, especially combat. I mean, combat runs pretty smooth for us now, and we only have to look up maybe a new term that some of the weapons don't, or we're not used to. Whereas in Warhammer 2nd, it's still, well, can you do that? Do you have enough action economy to do that? I don't know. And then, you got to remember to keep that shield up or save an attack for parry or an action for parry, things like that, I don't know how helpful that is in that game. You just got to remember the procedure, and I guess if you played it long enough, it'd be okay. Something that I think Warhammer Fantasy 4th does a lot better than Warhammer 2nd Edition is careers, and you're able to, in Warhammer Fantasy 2nd, you would kind of jump from career to career, and it's in the main book, it's not, it's really like you have to collect the trappings of the next career you want to go into, which can be very challenging because of the economy in the world, and then jump into that career with the dungeon masters or whatever the game master's permission. In fourth edition, it gives more agency to the players, where you can move up in your career and become better in the career that you first choose, and then switch if you want to here and there, just depending on how your adventuring career goes. So I really like that aspect of it better. Now, there's a lot more products out for second edition, but it is not hard to take a second edition product and run with fourth edition, which is what I did with the Terror of Talabheim. So, it's doable. It's pretty cool. And I actually did that with Rough Night at the Three Feathers. The first time I ran it, I took the second edition product and ran it in fourth edition. And then later, the author stole my idea and they converted Rough Night at the Three Feathers to fourth edition. No, not really. I'm sure they had that in mind because it's such a fantastic adventure. So anyway, Jason, don't stop calling in. Think of that small town girl and small town boy, and keep believing in yourself. Your calls are great, and I appreciate that you do call in, and we have this discussion that's not face-to-face, but in a series of messages, hence the forum and the fun of podcasting.
Great recap. The other thing, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, you might not have, but those turn skeletons that we eventually destroyed, another facet of DCC, the way the magic works is you can lose, it's not Vancian, you don't memorize, you don't have X amount of spells a day, but when you cast a spell, you roll to see if it casts successfully or not. How well you roll is how well the spell does, and if you roll poorly, you can lose the spell for the rest of the day. And I tried to cast a spell on those cowering skeletons to destroy them, Scorching Ray, and I failed that roll and lost that spell for a day. So Idris did tell about the sword. When before it was claimed, he mentioned it was used and it was great power and cut down the enemies like wheat or wheat-like substance, to paraphrase. And he also said that if the user gave up the sword, there would be consequences. So I think I did give them that information.
Yeah, Jason, that's definitely why I like the DCC game, and because I like the magic system and how it works, and that you can do really fantastic on a spell or lose it. And there's player decisions and economy decisions there, meta currency that you can use through spell burn or whatever to make things better. And I think it's pretty cool, that we get to talk about this game and sell it to other people. I am hoping, because it is a really good game. Yeah, I definitely need to give you a response after your next call in.
Idris was cagey at first about the sword, but before Arlen's character took control of the sword, Idris did lay clean the truth of it, and I did share with them what I could. I still don't know everything because, if I remember right, the GM was whispering the history to me and said he would send me more later. So I told them what I could tell them, but I didn't withhold the fact it was a cursed sword or any of that. Arlen knew that prior to picking the sword up. And he knew it, not just the player knew it, but the character knew it because my character told him. So, just because I was paraphrasing and rephrasing what you told my character doesn't mean I was, screwing the other players. So I like DCC. It was a great group of players. You did a great job running it. Really enjoying that game. I think you're giving us plenty of clues, like the potential to fall off the mountain, all that stuff.
I really enjoyed how you introduced and played Idris, from the shit-eating to the caginess, about what you learned from the pictographs of the history of the Moon King, or presumably the last of the Moon Kings, Gornamash. So yeah, I think it's really cool. I don't want to give too much away, but there were stories in there on how and why Gornamesh was or became thrice accursed. So there probably are ways, um, yeah, that probably gives some clues, which I think is neat. And what I like the most is, I kind of riff off you all and you players and what decisions you make with the tools you are given and the information, as scant as it might be, that you are given about the cosmology and the world and what you've come up with, in your backstory. It really engenders or promotes this emergent play that we are experiencing in this DCC game. And I can't wait to see what you guys do next time and what decision you make out of the multitude that you do have.
You, you were very clear how precarious it was, and we had a rope. We definitely could have tied off to each other to, made it safer. So that's on us as players. Like I say, I'm really enjoying that game, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next session. Thank you so much for running that DCC game. I've been asking you to run it for a while, and I'm having a blast playing in it. So again, thank you so much for running it because it is really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know you've been asking for a while, and I'm glad we finally are able to get it going. It's one of those on the list, and I probably need to add to the list. I don't know if I need to take things away from the list, but always got to add. But it was cool to cross off, one of the items from there and run this DCC game. It'd be really cool to finish the America tale. I hope we get to that at some point, and I don't know how or when we would get to it, or what we would need to do. I don't know if it's worth starting all over or not, but it's hard for me to. Well, I guess maybe we could start it all over. I think you suggested that somewhere, but it'd be neat to finish it the first time, right?
I agree that Arlen's doing a great job with Ash. I enjoyed your Ash game when I was playing in that, and unfortunately, like you say, real life things got in the way of that game. But I know my work schedule kept me from engaging with that game. As far as the party conflict, though, to be fair, earlier in that session, when my fighter went up front or my berserker went up front, in case we encountered a threat, because I had the most hit points and I was effectively the tank, right? So I go up front. We got to a door, and I asked your character Felix to check the door for traps, and you're like, "No, you got it." So it's not like your character was doing his job anyway. But you know, I'm just saying, being petulant. No, that was a weird session, and part of that was my fault, without a doubt. And I'll talk about it on my podcast. But I kind of, had a little bit of a rant about the VTT and my dislike of it. And I think it's important to clarify what my rant was about because it wasn't about the quality of the maps on the VTT or the way Arlen was running it. Arlen did a great job running it. The maps Arlen had there were great. I think it worked fine. The issue was more a turn order thing. What I didn't like was the fact that when we weren't in combat, there was no turn order like what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing in order. So everybody was just moving their tokens around the map willy nilly. And the problem was because we're using dynamic lighting and not everybody had torches, if you didn't have a torch and the other characters are zipping their tokens around the map, well, now all of a sudden you're left in the dark and you don't know what's happening because you can't see the light unless you're within its cone. And, a role playing game shouldn't be about can I move my token fast enough to keep up with your token? You know what I mean? So that was my problem. And we talked about that after the game as well. And I think we resolved that problem. And that wasn't Arlen's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It's just a play style difference.
Hey, Jason, I'm loving those porch sounds in the background over these last few calls. It's kind of neat to, I guess, imagine that you're just sitting on your back porch, maybe it's your front porch, and there's all these crickets and frog sounds out there. It's kind of cool. Fall, late summer, late summer mainly, right? Late summer, tomorrow's the first day of fall. Crazy that. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned, I think everyone was in a strange mood that morning, except probably for one player who, you know, maybe thought that we were being a bit dramatic. But hey, it is what it is, and sometimes you might go a little overboard in how you play your character, but as long as you can resolve it at the end, and I think you talk about that next, and maybe that is something to discuss a little further. I will after we hear your next set of messages.
All in all, that's a really fun game. I really enjoy interacting with you guys during that game, or for that campaign. And I agree with you. Yesterday was, or the other day when we played that game was just a weird thing. It was just a little bit off for a couple of us, not just you. And so it's all good. I think we had a good talk afterwards, and I think maybe this is something maybe you want to talk about this on your podcast. But I think every now and then when you have a game and there are slight player conflicts or bumps, you have to take a pause and after the session say, hey everybody, let's talk about this and sit down and talk at a game as players. you know how are we feeling about this? What do we need to adjust? And I think we did that successfully, and I think that shows that we're a mature group because we all like each other as individuals, and but we might have slightly different play styles. So I think that discussion afterwards is really important to holding the group together. I'm really happy we had that discussion. I think that group's going to be stronger after we had that discussion, where if we had just gone ended the game without having it, potentially there could be misunderstandings or bad feelings. And no, I don't think any player was trying to screw the other players at all. I think we were all trying to play our characters, per se. And again, my issue is I'm an old man and don't like VTTs, and then when people just move their tokens without any kind of turn order, that exacerbates that problem. But all in all, it was a neat session. Arlen did a wonderful job describing it, and his descriptions of the creatures and the combat were very vivid in his descriptions of the caves and the dungeons we're going through. So all in all, it was a great game. I'm really happy to be playing with you guys, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next session.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we took the time to discuss what had happened in character in game so it didn't fester or become something taken personally. I thought that was a really good decision that we did. And I too was probably annoyed by the jumping all over and being left in the darkness when I, looked away doing something else. Maybe that means I need to pay attention more. But then I was like, why am I in the dark? Why are we going here? Where are these doors that people are talking about? You kind of lose sight of things, and um, it can get a little frustrating, and that probably exacerbated what I was already thinking about how my character would be or feel after a near death experience, and not feeling getting an equal share of the wonderful, wonderful treasure, right? So that we've all contributed to finding in our own way. So, so yeah, I'm really glad we talked about it because I think it is cool to be able to say, yeah, this is what my character would do, but this is not me because we're role playing, right? But there are a lot of times when there have been in character conflicts that have festered and developed into player conflicts such that I don't want to play with this person anymore, and that's happened a lot of times. I can remember one. Well, I can remember one vividly for sure, where they were going through this castle or dungeon, and opening doors and kicking down doors and taking names, as it were. And but eventually, it's you get tapped out. Even in these more modern games when you have at will spells and you get all beat up and you're running out of resources. So most of the party was like, okay, we need to fall back and go to a place where we can chill out for a little bit. Maybe even quit the dungeon, quit the castle, whatever, wherever they were, um, and recuperate, rest, come back. Yeah, sure, there might be a response, but we can't open that next door. But one character as well said, "Well, my character would do this," and he kicks down the next door. even keeps going even when other players are not ready, and that just led to a that is like the only time I've ever seen one of my friends, get very pissed off in a game and stand up and use curse words and threaten to take his dice and go home. Yeah, it was pretty bad. And maybe there was already, there's a certain style of play that in the long run and in the long term is not healthy to a gaming group when you play that sort of snarky lone wolf type. Um, but hey, it's possible to do. You don't want to take away that agency from a particular player if they want to play that way. But let's discuss it after and say, hey, it's not personal. This is just what my player would do. Um, what could be done better next time? How do we resolve this in character? Or maybe we don't. So, but as long as we can go out and have a beer or other beverage, if you don't drink, together and chill. I mean, that's probably the best thing to do, is to resolve it maturely and not just sit off in our corners and sulk. And I think that's unfortunately what happens is we want to take agency for our player characters and our play style, but we got to be mature enough about it to discuss it afterwards if it seems to get tense or heated. There's another set of conflicts that eventually resulted. And this game it kind of fell apart for different reasons. That might have been part of it, but I think what happened was one player left, and another player made a player character similar to that player who left. And then when that player came back, it was like, well, the character that I made can do it better than your character can. So it was like two characters filling the same role, but one could do it better. So I think that ultimately annoyed this one player. They left, and then the kind of group fell apart. So that's unfortunate that happens, but that could have stemmed even from difficulty and unresolved issues in the play style between these two players. Right. So so we'll see. I think that was maybe 10, 15 years ago, so perhaps we have learned from that. Maybe it wasn't that long ago. It seems like it was that long ago. Another is a player that just did not get on with the rest of the players and would keep getting his player in trouble and suiciding them in a way, or doing things where they knew that they would get probably killed, and then not only would that put their player character in danger, but it also put the whole party in danger. And some people don't like that gonzo style play when the other players haven't agreed to do that. So again, that could have been, well, that's my player, he's curious and that's what he does, but hey, it might have been good to talk about it. And I think that's what needs to be done, is just let's talk through this, or maybe raise your hand and pause and say, hey, are you doing this in character? Are you doing this just to be funny? It's not funny to me. I don't know. How do you resolve these issues and deal with them? Maybe we're just all being dramatic about silly elf games, but I think ultimately, like Jason did say, we're all friends and we like to enjoy hanging out together and not just playing all the time. There are times when with all of those guys in that group, at one time or another, we just hang out sometimes on the virtual, or if possible live. It'd be great to travel to the UK and meet some of y'all who live over there and have played games with. That'd be hella great. And we go to all the fun pubs that some of you show pictures of, and drink some good beer and watch some football, and yeah, that'd be great. It's always great to hang out with you all and hear your call-ins and your support and play games with you. And why ruin that over an inter-party conflict in a tabletop role-playing game? Well, thank you, Jason, for those calls. This episode was all Jason all the time. His 9 calls, like the 9 who were taken, like the 9 rings of mortal men. 9 is an important number in RPGs, isn't it? Fancy that. Peace out, everyone.